Well, hello there. You've caught me sitting around the campfire, it seems. The campfire is such a wonderful place for stories, don't you think? I think so. So today, let's hang out around the fire and tell some stories, shall we? Our first one is about a strange visitor who drops off a strange gift. So, if a crow drops a bleeding statue on your house, might be best to just ignore it. It's been a couple of months since this phenomenon occurred. I also feel like I've bottled up too many emotions, as nobody would believe me, at least until I found you guys. So, here goes the story of the incident where I met this entity. One day, I went out to the balcony to sweep, as I usually do. I finished my work and took an afternoon siesta. After I woke up, I found a bronze statue, heavily oxidized, in a puddle of blood. I guess now was the time to give some context. I served in the armed forces, therefore I wasn't really afraid of blood, as I'd seen my fair share of blood and death. I picked up the statue to inspect it. It had a gash on its right wrist, and it was bleeding profusely. Now this freaked me out a little. I never expected any supernatural events to happen to me. I was always skeptical of my family's classic ghost stories. Yet, my years of physical and psychological training kicked in. Statue was about 12 inches tall, featured a woman wearing a robe and holding a paper fan, staring at a noose in front of her. I took the statue and put it in the sink. My analytical mind kicked in. I collected some of the blood for further analysis. I cleaned up the puddle and the trail of blood. Last thing I want is to be landed as a murderer by the Karen next door. I then took a bath and had a change of clothes. I also wondered how the statue had gotten there. Naturally, I checked the CCTV footage. What I saw shook me to my core. I got goosebumps and sweaty hands just looking at the footage. A crow, jet black in color, with red glowing eyes, swooped in from seemingly nowhere, dropped the statue, and flew away. It easily seemed to be able to carry the moderately heavy thing. Its movements were smooth, like a knife through butter. Its eyes, though, those eyes were glowing red. They sent shivers down my spine. They seemed to dissect me and draw me into an inescapable void. They betrayed an air of superior intelligence, yet seemed to be pleading in a way, pleading to help and take it seriously, like a trapped soul. I had to get it out of my head. I took a deep breath and decided that the next best course of action would be to call an archaeologist, or at least an art curator. I decided to check my contact list. I couldn't find an archaeologist, but I did miraculously find an art curator, a former friend of mine at university. I called her and asked her to come to my house immediately. She lived about 2 hours away. I promised her I'd make it worth her time. She told me she'd arrive the next day, it already being late. I decided to take dinner and fall asleep. I woke up to a pecking and cawing in the middle of the night. It appeared Mr. Crow had come to remind me to take this seriously. Well, that's exactly what I was doing, though for my sake, not for its. Yet, it didn't try to enter the house or hurt me or anything. This event seemed to give me purpose in life. The endless days of drinking alone at home, sleeping during the day, drinking again, not to mention the numerous suicide attempts, had taken a toll on my body. I lived to die. I had no one, no lovers, no family, scarce few friends. The next day at about 11, I could hear the honk of Stephanie's car. She was wearing a designer dress and bag, and here I was in my sweatpants. I took her to the kitchen. I think she was expecting to see art or valuable artifacts, not a horrific old statue. She gasped and almost fainted at the stream of blood in the sink. I put her on the couch and asked her to take a deep breath. I plucked some chamomile and crushed them. I find that the smell of chamomile calms me down. and it seemed to allay some of her fears. I asked her if she had a solution to my problem. Still in shock, she replied with a hushed voice, "No." She promised not to tell a soul and promptly left, not even asking for the fee. I guess regular people are afraid of blood to an extent, and it appears that the alcohol numbs my nerves as well. The only remaining answer was to take the blood to a forensic analyst, hoping that it was human and that they could recognize the DNA. I called one of my acquaintances from the Army, who now works as an analyst. He asked me to meet him at 4 in the evening. I said that sounded fine. The next week breezed by. That is, until the day I got the results. The blood was that of Miss Mizoom, who was found murdered at her home 2 years back. The killer was never found. I had to bribe my friend to keep his mouth shut so I didn't end up in a police interrogation room. I assessed the public records relating to her case. Her body was found in a state of advanced decomposition, despite being killed only a day prior. She had acid burns and bite marks all over her body. Her house, and especially the attic, was completely trashed. I took a cursory review of her family history. Her elder sister was found dead in her room 2 years later, 4 months back. She'd committed suicide by slashing her wrist. What's more, she was found with the statue in her room. Though, why was the younger sister's blood flowing from the statue when the older was found with it? It seemed that the deaths were connected somehow. The older sister's death seemed natural as suicide could be, and that's why I'm in front of her uncle's house, uninvited, like a burglar. I'm glad he didn't just shoot me on sight. Her uncle was an old man in his 60s. He didn't seem too happy, but he politely invited me in. He gestured for me to have a seat on the sofa and got me a cup of matcha. I introduced myself as an art curator who came into possession of a bronze statue. He almost spat at me in disgust. "So you make your living selling dead people's artifacts?" I shrunk back, but calmly, as I replied, "No, I came into possession of it through an agent. I didn't know it belonged to a deceased person, till today." I continued, "I wanted to pay my respects. I was sorry for your loss." He seemed a bit more pleased and replied, "Her grave is in the Shinto shrine." I nodded my head in acceptance. I asked, "If it's okay to share, may I know why she did such a thing?" He was taken aback. He replied, "Thank you for your concern. Not even her own family demonstrated that. Kiyomori was quite attached to her younger sister. Actually, now that I think about it, she probably had an unhealthy obsession with her sister. She paid for her college tuition, funded her hobbies, advised her, and followed her everywhere, if possible, despite being a responsible adult. The only obsession she had other than her sister was the statue you talked about. The statue was that of my aunt, Kia, Mori's grandmother. She chose to end her life the same way, just like Kiyomori did." Why did she commit suicide?" I asked. "You're obviously a curious person. I'll humor you. My aunt was forcibly married to a corrupt administrator. When she threatened to demask him, he turned public opinion against her and managed to get her arrested for adultery. She was sentenced to be hanged, but cut herself a day before. Her only choice was the noose or the blade. The statue was a commemoration of her honesty." I thanked him and walked to the front door, absent-minded, trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. As I walked out, I sensed a tingling on the back of my spine. I turned my back to see a pair of glowing yellow eyes staring back at me. It suddenly skittered away, with its body not to be seen. I'm not proud of what I did next. I ran through the street as fast as I could and reached home in record time. I opened a can of beer and turned on the TV. I doubted the soundness of my mind, and I thought my eyes were maybe playing tricks on me. Yet it had to be true. After all, I was sober back then, and My eyesight did save me back in Afghanistan. Also, in no way am I going to get killed like another horror movie protagonist. I don't think I'll knock on doors or investigate directly. I loaded my concealed Remington and disabled the safety. I'm going to sleep with it every day. I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes when I sit around the fire, I like to make little bets with myself on which one of the logs is going to burn through first. I know, it's a little weird, but it's something I've done since I was a kid, and I guess it's a hard habit to shake. We all have the problem with earworms sometimes. No, not literally, but you get a song stuck in your head and it's all you can think about. You seem to hear it everywhere. But when this person hears a strange song, it may not turn out to be quite so benign. I've been hearing a strange song every night for a week now. Crazy thing is, I recognize that this song isn't even in English. I've studied Latin and Cantonese in college, but this song seems to be a mixture of both. The song sounds as if sirens are singing it. The song doesn't even rhyme. The worst part is, it keeps putting me to sleep and plunging me into a world of nightmares. I listened for over a week now, and I think the song goes something like this. There is a light inside your heart. Think about it. Your light is death. Your God is false. You will pay for your sin. Let us guide you, show you your true hell. You will know your sin, and you will be guided to better morals. I go to church every Sunday to find the answers, but I keep only seeing a trap door opening. I keep going to fortune tellers, but they never saw a good future for me. The night this all started was the first time I had the nightmare. The same nightmare I've been having for a week and 5 days now. This is how the nightmare goes. I wake up on a rocky floor that smells of brimstone. The sky is a deep purple, close to black. I wake up just as the world's sun is setting. The sunset appears to be beautiful. It's in a deep orange and purple range. Then, I see figures appearing like biblical angels. But these things slowly turn into clownish creatures, as though they were taking off their masks of some kind. I hear a childish laughter that slowly turns cruel, and after a minute, it's even crueler than that. By the 5-minute mark, it's turned into a fiendish cackle. The first angel says, "How foolish that your Bible has taken its full effect on you." The second one says, "Oh, you should have learned what a demon Abraham is." The third one says, "All right, sisset man, how do you feel about having what you've done to the true saints done to you?" Before the first insult finished, I would wake up in a cold sweat. I've been remembering this nightmare because of its reoccurrence. This morning, after I attended church, I felt a cold chill. Not like the usual chill. This felt like ice, all over my body all at once. It felt like I walked through something. I found my wife at her desk, writing some sort of paper. I peeked, only to find that she had divorce papers in front of her. "Martha, what are you doing? This marriage can't go on any longer. My friends keep telling me I should go find a more suitable man. Well, I have found one." "But why?" "Don't but why me, Samuel. My friends don't want me to be with you anymore, and I have closed my ears to reason for too long." "Why, Martha?" "Listen, Samuel, you and your religious crap can go to hell for all I care. You support slave labor, and you call for the elimination of my friends, and worst of all, you forced me to marry you just to make your church happy. It's time I listened to my heart and left you, you right-wing idiot." She stormed off then, luggage behind her. She drove off in our car and sped off down the highway. I assumed she was going to a court to go through with the divorce. Anyway, I decided to take a cat nap this afternoon and nearly crapped myself at the same nightmare hit me. But no song was sung to me that time. I went straight into the nightmare as soon as I closed my eyes. Maybe that song was an incantation of some form. After the nightmare was over, I decided to ask a fortune teller for help. And this time, I decided to listen. Samuel Hill. It's a coincidence my name is close to the one in the exclamation, "What in Sam Hill?" It's not too late to mend. However, today is the last day to choose your path. Will you turn away from the lurking light and the trap that Abraham has set for all humans, and let your eyes adjust to the dark? Or will you continue on this evil path and let the true hell consume you within the last few days of your life? Whichever you choose, it may not change what you have done for your cult, but your future will be affected by what your heart lets you choose. However, I sense that it is unlikely you will change your ways. The probability of you having the ability to turn away from the church and the deadly trap it has set is less than 1%. But that doesn't mean that you can't change. But if you do manage to know your sin and change and help others, come see me again. I will see the results of what you choose. I called my wife to tell her the news of my finally listening to her, and she never answered. I decided to call her friends and apologize for everything, but I think they blocked me too. I'm now certain that Martha thinks I'll never change. I tried everything for the whole afternoon, from when I had lunch to now. Notes on cars, sending people good vibes, wholesome drawings that let people know that they matter and should have their rights. You know, the whole shebang. But all I got in return was pure anger and stones thrown at me. Now I'm thinking my actions have gone so far that they all hate me. It's as if, in my attempt to change, I have wriggled farther into the trap. I've been backed into a corner, and I don't know what to do now. I've looked back on my actions and looked at all my behaviors in the past on the internet, and I've got the results that I was a narcissist, an asshole, and now I've noticed my own narcissistic behavior. I've been bawling for the last half hour, trying to figure out what to do with myself. I've been trying to change myself, but no one in this liberal town where I live seems to want to give me a chance. I think now I'm ready to die. I feel like if everyone's going to say that I'm a lying asshole, the only way left for me is death. I want to listen and be better, knowing what I've done is wrong, but now being the cishet white male that I am feels wrong. Feels like I can't have any more second chances. Should you discover this note, I'll be in the hell that I've been shown. My body will stay in this world, but I won't be back anytime soon. I'm sorry, Martha. Sorry, Martha's friends, Alicia, Tina, Ezekiel, Yvette, and Hella. Sorry, Mr. Johnson, my fortune-telling friend. I really did some wrong things in life, and I realized that what I did makes my attempts to change look like a lie. I noticed that if I can't change in anyone's eyes, I would like to say that death is the only choice I have. I hope you guys can find it in your heart to forgive me, but if I really am beyond forgiving, I guess you can just burn my body. This was the suicide note left by Samuel Roger Hill, who hanged himself in the living room of his house at 6:30 p.m. today. He wasn't missed very much. The only people that did miss him were the members of his church, St. Jonathan's Evangelical Church. Doctors say that he may have been driven to kill himself by insanity, but this has never been confirmed. I added a few more logs while you weren't looking. Sorry, just couldn't help myself. I like to spend as much time around the fire with you as I possibly can. So, let's roll on into the next story, shall we? We all have health problems sometimes. I'm not going to lie, I really don't have a good lead into the story. So, sometimes something, dripping and dropping. Enjoy. At first, I ignored the dripping sound. I figured it was just raining, but the drip just wouldn't stop. No matter where I go, it's there. I've searched the whole house by now for the source, but no matter where I stand, it seems to be coming from over my head. I called a plumber. They should be here between 10 and 2. I'm really hoping for 10. Sound is driving me crazy. I try to distract myself with music, but no matter how far I turn the stereo up, the dripping is still there. Incessant. Just loud enough to form a backbeat. Drip, drip, drip. The plumber showed up. His eyes are red like he hasn't been sleeping. I explained the problem, and he goes to look. Yeah, I've been hearing the dripping for a couple of days now, the plumber says from under the sink. The leak clearly isn't there, but I don't say anything about it. He's the plumber, after all. It says so on his name tag, along with his name, which I'm certain he told me, but I must have forgot. The plumber keeps talking. I'm starting to think it's some kind of tinnitus because the dripping's following me around. This drip does that? I admit. I can't seem to narrow down where it is. Well, it isn't here, the plumber says, coming up from under the sink. His eyes look even redder now. I got a few more places to check, though. I follow him around the house. He weaves a bit drunkenly, and I start to wonder why his eyes are so red. Just my luck to get a plumber who can't find the drip because he's hitting the bottle of scotch. Been getting a lot of these calls, the plumber slurs. You're lucky we could get you in. Seems like everyone has a leak they can't find these days. Just find it, I say. The tapping, dripping, dropping, clanking sound makes it hard to be patient. Maybe that's why the first thing I thought when the plumber dropped to the floor was, I'm supposed to be thankful for this alcoholic showing up. My second reaction is better, as it clicks with me that something's seriously wrong with this guy. I sink to the floor beside him and reach out. I call his name, which I only know because of the nameplate on his chest. I've forgotten his name even as I say it. He doesn't respond. Little pool of blood spreading on the floor from his nose. The next bit happens in a whirl. I call 911 and the paramedics show up. One of them has bloodshot eyes, and I find myself staring at that rather than at the corpse on the floor, because by then I know the plumber's dead. He hasn't so much as blinked since he fell to the floor. They take the body away and leave me with a little pool of blood slowly congealing on the tiles in my kitchen. When I head to get some towels to clean it up, I pass the bathroom mirror. My eyes look a little bloodshot too. Probably the dripping. Makes it hard to sleep at night. Though, maybe it's time to pick up a bottle of scotch myself. I'm not usually a heavy drinker, but something to help me relax a bit. The next day I'm sitting in my living room with the TV blaring in a doomed attempt to drown out the drip, drip, drip. A report comes on the news that catches my attention, mainly because I recognize the plumber's face. The familiar plumber's snapshot is alongside a few others on a screen cap. The details of the report are hard to concentrate on as the drip, drip, drip seems to wind in among the calmly stated facts from the news reporter. But even with that, I managed to get the basics. The people on screen, including my plumber, are all dead. That part makes sense. The rest doesn't seem to compute properly, even with my limited knowledge of biology and how the body works. The findings in his death don't feel right. When they brought my plumber to the hospital to examine him, there was no brain in his head. His entire skull was filled with blood. He was the first. Lucky me to have the first die in my kitchen and leave a pool of blood. The others are victims that have come in since his death. All dead now, according to the newscaster, with her perfect lipstick and her wide blue eyes. The CDC's been called in. The newscaster gives a list of warning signs of this new disease. I barely hear most of it, because it sounds more like a practical joke than a real thing. The only thing I really pick up on is the dripping sound. The dripping in my own head wouldn't let me tune that factoid out. Apparently all the victims heard a dripping sound, which the doctor and the scientist are proposed was the sound of blood dripping into their empty skull, filling the place where their brain was supposed to be. I turned off the TV and headed upstairs to bed, despite it all just being the middle of the day. People can't live without brains. Even I know that. Despite being unreasonably exhausted, trying to sleep is hard with the dripping sound. I can't escape the repetitive noise. I shut my blinds, trying to blot out the sunshine outside, and climb back under the coverlet. I find myself mulling over the TV report. It can't be real. How could they even know that the people had empty skulls prior to the dripping? Were people coming in to report this to them before dying? And who would have even thought to look for such a thing? Outside the window, the sound of a siren screeches by, fading into a keening sound in the distance. By the time I finally drift off to sleep, I've convinced myself that I imagine the entire report. I dream that I'm trying to find a leak in an old basement that smells like mold and copper. I find blood dripping down the wall instead, and realize I'm standing in a puddle of it. By the time I get back to the basement stairs, it's up to my knees. Morning comes, and the dripping sounds louder, more like the plop of water in a full bathtub than droplets hitting the porcelain. Like my brain's filling up. Except that thought comes directly from the news report that I must have dreamed. I go downstairs and turn the TV on again to make breakfast. There's a dried pool of blood in the kitchen floor. I should have cleaned that up. I'm gearing up to do that as I eat some dry toast for breakfast. But the news comes on and distracts me. Pictures of the local hospital and a new set of faces fill the screen. I see a number, but I don't recall the death total a moment later. Must be hard to remember things without a brain, I tell myself. I don't listen to the newscaster's report this time. Instead, I pick up my smartphone and do my own research. The report I heard was real, or at least the report really happened. Lots of people are calling the disease made up and falsified, but I noticed that everyone from where I lived is scared. There are more reports of deaths, wives telling what happened to their husbands, children saying what happened to their parents, and every story starts with that dripping that no one else can hear. I do some research on the doctors who are putting in this insane claim. They were all respectable before this, and their reports still chill me in a way I don't expect because all of them are saying exactly what I thought. This shouldn't be possible. People can't live without brains, but they are. That makes me study the report carefully, searching for the underlying fact, even if those facts contradict logic. The body count's up in the hundreds now. Didn't take long. The disease seems like it takes about 4 to 5 days in total. Now, I'm sure of what the sound in my head is. It's a drip, slow and steady, of blood into my empty skull, filling the space left vacant. Drip, drip, drip. No matter how much I study the report, there's no explanation for this phenomenon, nor why the people die when the empty space is full. But they do, and by inference, that means I will too, unless I can figure out a way around my looming fate. I clean up the dried blood on my kitchen floor, overflow from the plumber's brain. He should have drained it beforehand and brought himself some time. How full is my skull? I'm 3 days into this awful dripping. I go out to my car and consider driving away, but the dripping would just follow me. When I go back inside, I'm thankful that I didn't leave. The TV tells me that the borders of the city have been closed. We're all in full quarantine for the rest of the world. Another fact sneaks in to frighten me. The death toll is up in the thousands now. And that's just the ones that have been reported and tallied. There are only 2 things the city's doing now: dripping and dropping dead. It strikes me as funny, and I laugh. I can see my reflection in the kitchen window as night falls. My eyes are a horrid shade of red. I wouldn't mind some scotch, but pretty sure that even if there were places open out there, they wouldn't serve me. No one seems to know if this is contagious, but no one's taking any chances. We don't know what the cause of this plague is, but the quarantine has people thinking that it can be contained. That means that we're spreading it somehow. No scotch in the house. I lock all my doors and bar the windows as night deepens. There are bodies in the street. I can't find a death toll online anymore. No one's doing anything akin to scientific research. I find several places where people outside the city are discussing what's happening. I try to leave comments, but my fingers don't seem to want to type anything sane. I can locate a few like me, typing similar comments. All we talk about is the dripping. The drip, drip, drip. But it started to sound like a ticking sound to me. After all, that drip is my life, ticking back to 0. In the middle of the night, I hear a gunshot fired, then another. Someone runs by outside my house, and I'm pleased that they don't fall down and die. There's enough corpses outside my house. When I survive this, I don't want these bodies to be my responsibility. No one out there is going to help me. Not those talking about the disease from their safe, unaffected cities, and certainly not the dwindling population of the city around me. I stare at my kitchen floor and think about the plumber. Ending up like him is hardly appealing, so I won't. His problem, I decide, was that he didn't have the information I do. He didn't know what was happening to him, so he couldn't address it. He didn't know that he didn't have a brain in his skull, and it was slowly filling up. My leg up is that I know these things. I wonder how we lost our brains and if we can get them back. But those are facts that I don't have. The people who came after me may have them, but I have to make do with what I know. And what I know is that my skull is filling up with blood, and I'll die. A smile spread across my face. I feel it stretching unused muscles. All I have to do in order to not die is not let my skull fill up. I head into the garage and dig in the tools there. I find my drill and bring it inside. Safety first. I wash and sanitize the bit, then I leave my sink faucet on. I figure I can wash and rinse the thing as I go in if it becomes necessary. Good thing I know my sink doesn't leak. I giggle a little. I'm getting silly. It's all the dripping, I guess. I tell myself it's hard to focus with the dripping, and maybe, just maybe, it's hard to think clearly with no brain. The best place to go in, I decide, is the dead center of the skull. I don't need to worry about hitting my brain, after all. I plug the drill in and put the bit where it belongs. I picture the blood coming out of the plumber's nose. Obviously, that doesn't work as a drain before death, but I'm smart enough to create my own drain. My head would never fill up. Nope, I'll just let that pesky dripping blood drain out the front. The back might have been a better choice. Not to mess up my face, but I can't properly reach back there. Forehead it is, I guess. I turn the drill on and press it to my forehead. You'd think it'd hurt a lot, but the truth is, it doesn't hurt all that much at all. After the first surprise jolt, it's more like a toothache. Nasty, but localized. And the knowledge it would be over soon kept me going. The drill bit pops through the other side of my skull. I feel it because the resistance is gone, and the drill just slides forward. I pull it out and tipped my head over the sink, letting the blood drain out and get washed away by the flow of water. I wonder who else has thought of this as I clean up bone fragments and blood from the kitchen. Then I wander into my living room. I don't turn on the TV. I can't hear it over the dripping anymore. People are screaming outside. I feel sorry for them. I figured it out. I'm safe, but they're still out there, in the worst of it. I go to the window and look out, peeling back the curtain. The world is fresh and new, vital. Looks redder than it did before. It's actually a little hard to see. Oh, I should have thought of that. The blood is draining into my eyes. Not dripping now, but there's a lot of red, more than the tiny drips could account for. Can't see anything through the blood drip, dripping over my eyes. I do hope you made it through that last one. I know, it's a bit of a doozy, but I'm glad you're still here, soaking in all this warmth with me and just enjoying the day. I love to explore old things. I don't know if you do too, but it really makes me nostalgic for times gone by. So, when the subject of our next story stays in a room that he hasn't stayed in a while, he discovers some things that he may wish had stayed forgotten. I implore you not to go looking for room 313. The taxi jolted to a stop in front of the hotel, a monolith of grandeur and forgotten glamour. I paid the driver and stepped out, scanning the facade that had stood the test of time, hiding within the walled secrets that the city had tried to bury. My name's Michael Turner. I'm a detective by trade and obsession. I guess you could call me grizzled, hardened by years of chasing shadows in this unforgiving city. Today, I was to face an enigma that had danced just out of reach of law enforcement for decades. Room 313. As I walked towards the ornate entrance, memories of my last failed investigation ambushed me. I blinked against the sudden sting in my eyes. Emily, my partner and the more optimistic half of our duo, was gone. Our last case had taken her away, stolen by a faceless criminal we'd never managed to apprehend. Her loss was a wound, fresh and raw, and it had only served to drive my determination deeper. Not for revenge, but for justice, for answers. And that's what led me to room 313. Check-in was smooth. The concierge barely betrayed any surprise when I requested the key to the infamous room. His eyes held a flicker of something, though. Pity, maybe fear, doesn't matter. I grabbed the key and headed towards the elevator, the gleaming brass number 313 engraved on it, a constant reminder of my purpose. The hallway leading to 313 was surprisingly mundane. The carpet was dull, nondescript patterns that seemed completely at odds with the stories tied to it. It reminded me of the countless crime scenes I'd been to over the years. The mundane wrapped around the macabre. Reality dancing a deadly waltz with the unseen. I slid the key into the lock, the door creaking open, that had become a character in the city's darkest nightmares. I dropped my bag by the bed, the simple action resonating in the silence. Room 313. How many lives had it claimed? How many stories had it silenced? Each death was a question, each victim a mystery. I stared around, my eyes falling on a picture hanging on the wall. It was an old black and white shot of the hotel in its heyday, a beacon of opulence and power, now a monument to death. I moved to the window, staring out at the sprawling cityscape. Lights twinkled. Life moved on, oblivious to the room of death I now occupied. I couldn't help but think of Emily. Would we have cracked this case together? The thought was bitter, the loss suddenly immeasurable. After setting my bag down, I began the initial survey of room 313. My eyes swept across every inch of the room, every corner, every crevice, looking for clues. Anything could be a clue, a piece of a decades-old puzzle that had eluded so many before me. As I walked deeper into the room, I couldn't shake off the cold draft that seemed to follow me. It wasn't a steady, natural current, but erratic gusts that made the thin curtains flutter like disturbed spirits. I went over to the window, expecting to find it slightly ajar, but it was sealed shut, the paint around the edges thick and uncracked. The chill wasn't coming from outside. It was emanating from within the room itself. There was a peculiar hum in the air, a low, throbbing vibration that tickled the back of my skull. It was almost imperceptible, drowned out by the muted sounds of the city below. But in the quiet moments between the distant honks of traffic and the occasional murmur of hotel staff in the corridors, I could hear it, persistent, unyielding. Next came the lights. They flickered with a life of their own, dancing shadows across the wall in a haunting ballet. Initially, I chalked it up to the hotel's old wiring, but there was a rhythm to it, a pattern that sent shivers down my spine. They seemed to react, dimming when I ventured towards certain corners, brightening when I approached others. And then there was the noise, soft whispers that drifted through the room, incoherent but palpable. A sudden clattering like something metallic dropping on the floor, even though nothing seemed out of place. The distant sound of children's laughter, chilling in its mirth. None of it made sense, yet all of it set my nerves on edge. I spent hours documenting everything. The cold drafts, the lights, the sounds. My recorder never left my side, a faithful companion that captured the eerie symphony of room 313. Yet as I sat on the edge of the ancient bed, the weight of the room's history pressing down on me, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could I really do this? Could I solve a mystery that seemed more rooted in the supernatural than the physical? As darkness fell and the strange noises of 313 grew louder, I slipped into a fitful sleep. With it came the dreams, though dreams feels like too soft a word. These were nightmares, woven with the tragic tapestry of room 313's history. Each night I found myself in a different area, witnessing events that I knew were reenactments of the murders that had made 313 famous. I was there, but not as myself, rather an invisible bystander, forced to watch the horror unfold with grim helplessness. One night I stood in the room as it was in 1940. I watched in horror as a woman in a flapper dress was strangled by an unseen force. Her terrified eyes locked onto mine as she clawed at her throat, her gasps for air growing weaker until they were no more. Another night I was back in the 60s. A businessman was pacing nervously in the room. Suddenly the lights went out, and when they flickered back, his lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor, his eyes wide open in an eternal stare of fear. Each dream was a horrific puzzle piece, a chilling glimpse into the atrocities that room 313 had witnessed. They weren't just dreams. They were echoes of the past, reaching out to me, pleading for me to uncover their truth. While they provided crucial insights into each murder, they also took a heavy toll on my mental health. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the echoes of their final screams still lingering in my ears. Each morning was a struggle to pull myself together, to remind myself of the task at hand, of the justice these souls deserved. The boundaries between sleep and wakefulness started to blur, and the shadows of room 313 seemed to creep into my consciousness, even during the day. The constant whispering, the flickering lights, the reoccurring nightmares began to gnaw at my sanity. My hands shook as I pored over my notes, the victims' faces merging into one another, their terror becoming my own. The distinction between night and day began to blur in room 313 as the supernatural happenings became my reality. The room, like an entity in its own right, started revealing itself to me. Ghostly apparitions began to manifest during the waking hours, their eternal forms flickering in and out of existence, like phantoms caught in a limbo between the past and the present. A spectral woman in a flapper dress would point to a hidden compartment under the bed, leading me to a pearl necklace, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. The translucent figure of the businessman from the 60s would appear next to the window, his hands reaching out towards the view outside, where a long-forgotten sign revealed the name of his company. Each apparition led me towards clues, their spectral guidance a chilling beacon in the darkness. As I pieced together their stories, their ties to room 313, an eerie pattern began to emerge. The victims, all from different eras, shared one commonality: their birthday. Strange enough, it was the same as mine, a chilling coincidence that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if 313 had chosen me, not just to reveal its secrets, but also to tie me to it in a deadly narrative. It seemed impossible, surreal even, but the evidence was right there. Birth certificates, diaries, newspaper clippings, all painting a chilling picture of shared fates and cursed timelines. It was like a dark thread spun from the loom of destiny, binding all of us to room 313. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat amidst the clues, the links, the ghostly echoes of shared birthdays. I couldn't help but wonder what it meant. Was I just another character in this twisted tale, my fate tied to room 313, just like the victims before me? Or was I here to break the cycle, to finally shed light on the dark enigma that had claimed so many lives? As I delved deeper into the mystery of room 313, an undercurrent of unease grew stronger, wrapping itself around the room like a chilling shroud. The once benign whispers turned into malicious growls. The temperature dropped dramatically, and an ominous feeling of being watched began to haunt me. One afternoon I was flipping through a victim's diary, and the room's chandelier began to swing violently, almost as if in protest. Before I could react, the heavy fixture plummeted down, crashing onto the spot where I'd been sitting seconds ago. The close call left my heart pounding in my chest, my mind grappling with the reality and the danger I'd narrowly avoided. The very next day, while I was studying the faded pictures of a victim, an icy gust of wind whipped through the room, extinguishing the lights. The darkness was suffocating, impenetrable. A floorboard creaked, followed by a muffled sound of an approaching entity. I held my breath, feeling an intangible presence closing in. As a searing pain shot through my arm, I ignited my flashlight, revealing a shard of glass slicing into my skin. A mere second later, and it could have pierced my heart. Each encounter with the room's vengeful spirits left me with a chilling realization. The ghosts of room 313 were growing more hostile. Their spectral warnings had turned into lethal threats. It was as if they were warning me off, their spectral forms forming deadly traps around each clue I discovered. But why? Didn't they want me to solve the mystery? Weren't they crying out for justice, their stories begging to be heard? The malevolent resistance puzzled me, only fueling my determination to seek the truth. While going through a trunk filled with old photographs, I stumbled upon an aged black and white picture of a grand party. It was held in room 313, which was far more opulent and lively than its present state. At the center of the revelry stood a distinguished man, no doubt the hotel's founder, surrounded by well-wishers. The back of the photograph bore the date, the same birthday that connected me, the founder, and the victims. An unsettling realization dawned upon me. Room 313 was where the hotel's founder, who also shared our peculiar birthday, held his grand birthday celebration. But amidst the joy and the laughter, a dark cloud loomed, a tragedy that would forever taint these walls. In a dusty, forgotten corner of the room, I found a secret drawer camouflaged in the intricate woodwork. It held a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. The script inside revealed the chilling past of room 313. The entries were from the hotel's founder, documenting his life, and more importantly, his birthdays. One entry in particular was smudged with something that looked suspiciously like dried tears. It told a harrowing tale of a birthday party gone horribly wrong, an act of betrayal that ended in a bloody feud, resulting in several deaths, all born on the shared date. The founder himself, guilt-ridden and desolate, met a tragic end within the cursed walls of room 313. A chill ran down my spine. That was the genesis of the curse. The room, steeped in guilt and fury of the bloody birthday event, became a vengeful entity, forever haunted by its past. It was as if the special energies were anchored to that fatal event, repeating the cycle of death on a shared date. And here I was, another soul born on that cursed day, standing amidst the spectral remains of the past. I was targeted, drawn into this macabre dance of death and hauntings by a date that was supposed to be a cause of celebration. Armed with my newly discovered evidence, I marched to the hotel's management office. The door to the manager's office was imposing, heavy mahogany that spoke of the grandeur this place had once held. I knocked, and the door creaked open, revealing a man hunched over a mountain of paperwork. "Detective Turner, what can I do for you?" he said, barely glancing up from his desk. I tossed the worn-out journal on top of the paperwork. "Explain this," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. He looked startled, his eyes widening as he picked up the old book, leafing through the brittle pages. His face went pale as he read, but he quickly regained his composure. "Yes, I'm aware of the room's history," he admitted, choosing his words carefully. "The tragic events that took place here are a sad part of the hotel's past. But you didn't think it necessary to inform me of this," I reported, anger flaring in my voice. "The room is cursed. It's a death trap for those born on a specific date. My birthday." "I assure you, Detective, we had no knowledge of this birthday curse," he responded, though his gaze wavered, hinting at deceit. "We thought the hauntings were just, urban legend." But the clues added up differently. The man was lying. The hotel had been capitalizing on the room's morbid history, using it as a selling point to attract guests who were intrigued by the supernatural. I slammed my hand down on the desk, causing him to jump. "You exploited the victims suffering for profit. You knowingly put people in danger. And for what? Couple extra bucks?" He looked at me then, a hint of remorse flickering in his eyes, but he said nothing. Instead, he bowed his head in guilty silence. The confrontation left a bitter taste in my mouth. I had to uncover the truth the hotel manager had chosen to ignore. Room 313 wasn't just a paranormal oddity. It was a death trap. As I stood before the room, its dark aura seemed to pulsate with unseen energy, as if awaiting my return. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed open the door, stepping into the room that had now become an all-too-familiar haunting ground. With the room's secrets unveiled, the atmosphere felt more oppressive than before. The walls, stained with untold pain and sorrow, seemed to close in on me, but I squared my shoulders, fortified my resolve, and spoke into the silent gloom. "I know what happened here. I know about the curse." A cold wind swept through the room, sending shivers down my spine. Shadows danced in the corners, forming spectral silhouettes of their victims. "I know you're all victims of a horrendous betrayal. I promise you, I will bring justice to your untimely deaths." The response was immediate. A surge of paranormal activity washed over me. The ethereal figures appeared, their ghostly faces contorted in pain and anger. One, more solid than the rest, stepped forward. The Founder. His spectral eyes were full of torment as they bore into mine. "We seek peace," his voice echoed through the room, a chilling sound that seemed to come from every direction. "Can you offer us that, Detective?" "I can, and I will," I responded, holding his spectral gaze. "But I need your help. I need to know everything." A moment of silence passed before the room convulsed violently. The chandelier swayed, lights flickered, and a cold gust blew around me, turning into a vortex. I felt the room closing in on me, the darkness creeping over my senses. "No!" I shouted above the cacophony, the room shaking as if the very foundations of the hotel were rebelling against me. "I won't be your next victim. I'm here to help you." With every ounce of strength I had left, I pulled myself towards the door, fighting against the unseen forces trying to keep me. The door handle was ice cold, numbing my fingers. I yanked it open and tumbled outside, gasping for breath. As I lay on the corridor, the carpeted floor underneath me, the room settled. The door slammed shut. The final showdown had been draining, the room testing my resolve and nearly claiming me in the process. The following days were a blur of restless activity. I pored over every bit of evidence I had on room 313, cross-referencing with public records and local news archives. The daunting puzzle began to piece itself together, painting a bleak picture of a hotel exploiting its dark history for profit. I arranged a press conference. The thought of standing in front of the media, my words echoing in their microphones, sent a shiver down my spine. But the victims deserved their stories to be heard. As the cameras began to roll and the reporters hushed, I took a deep breath and began. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today, not as Detective Michael Turner, but as a spokesperson for the forgotten souls of room 313. I told them everything. The birthday curse, the victims, the spectral encounters, most importantly, the hotel manager's role in exploiting the tragedy. Their silence told me they were shocked, but I could also see the wheels turning, connecting the dots. After the press conference, I confronted the hotel manager again. This time, I had the eyes of the public on my side. You've played with lives, disregarded the dead, and for what? I spat out, slamming the damned evidence on his desk. A bit of profit? A little thrill? The manager, pale and shaken, had no choice but to accept responsibility. We'll take steps to correct this, to remember the victims properly, he stammered, his previous arrogance long gone. The hotel was forced to address its haunted past. Room 313 was sealed with a plaque put out as a memorial to the victims, acknowledging their unjust demise. A promise of reform was made to prevent further exploitation of the paranormal events within the hotel. As I left the hotel for the last time, I glanced back at room 313. There was a silence, a sense of relief that seemed to resonate from it. The victims were no longer a tragic tale spun for profit. Their memories were respected, their stories heard. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd carried their stories, their hopes for justice, and we had won. As I walked away, the haunting echoes of room 313 seemed quieter, softer, a step towards peace, towards redemption, for them as well as for me. Fire's burning low now. I think we've only got time for one more story before it's time to put it out and move along. We all find strange things in the woods sometimes, whether it's a discarded something or another, or a bear sleeping in the middle of the woods. We all have strange things and strange stories about the woods, especially about the Ozarks, that strange bit of Appalachia. But when longing turns out to be an Ozark hellbender, then maybe it's time to stop crunching through the woods. It was early July when I first saw the path. It was a dark point in a ring of feather bells, and it had a pole to it, an empty wanting, sitting in the tree line. I grew up in a pretty rural part of southern Missouri, in a house in the Ozarks. It was a beautiful place, and a beautiful childhood. Dad bought the land empty and built the house himself as a distraction from drinking. Mom put her foot down shortly after I was born, and Dad knew that she was right. So we bought the land, and instead of going out after work, he'd go to the land and work on the house. Giving himself a choice between drinking himself to death or building his dream house worked like a charm, and he'd been 15 years sober when he died. It hit me hard, but now I can see how lucky I was. I had him long enough to learn all about how to live near and with the land. He taught me carpentry, hunting, fishing, and all kinds of things that lots of girls rarely get a chance to learn. In the spring and fall, he'd always take a week and go out into the woods and just live there. All three of us would. We'd bring about half enough food and try to make up for the rest ourselves. Depending on the season, there were mushrooms, berries, cattails, pawpaws to collect. Dad could always sniff out a good fishing hole, too. Mom was a great camp cook. She'd usually sneak a few things from the garden into her pack. Onions and garlic scrapes, peppers, and the like. It's kinds of things that make whatever it is you're cooking smell and taste good. Dad and I would bring back fish. Mom would throw some butter in the pan, and next thing you know, the forest would smell like caramelizing peppers and garlic. We never saw her pack the good stuff, never saw her chop it, and it would just suddenly be there. We always kind of suspected witchcraft. We'd settle in with full bellies, and Dad would tell stories about strange sounds in the woods, weeping and moaning, monsters crashing through the underbrush, missing people, and the occasional scrapes left on car doors. The good stuff, I'd say. I'd get good and scared and snuggle in between them while I was still young enough to do so. I miss my dad, but it's easy to see him and all the things I do and love. There was a couple, Reggie and Laura, who lived not far away. We were neighbors, but we had 15 acres, and they had 25, so you usually had to put effort into seeing them. When Dad died, Richie took me out in the woods and showed me the most magical place I'd ever seen. It was a clearing less than a mile from our house, but it was surrounded by some pretty intimidating-looking hollers, so if you didn't know where the pass was, you'd never find it. Reggie knew where the pass was, and after that, so did I. The sun would shine in like a ray of gold, and there was a single flat boulder in the middle that you could use as a seat or a table. In the early summer, it would fill up with pink and purple spring cress, and the tree line would be ringed with toothwort flowers, all nodding and mournful. The real show came later in the summer, around July, when the feather bells would light up the tree line like a wildfire. They grow like long grasses, with a line of bright red flowers licking at the air all along the tops of them. I'd sprawl out over the boulder, feel the warmth of the sun, surrounded by those fiery extravagances of feather bells, and soak it all in. I could feel the energy of the place coursing through me. It felt connected, honest, true. It was a place of great solace for me. I'd hike out along the creek and collect some of the wisteria, then head to the pass and spend the rest of the day weaving them into baskets on my shoulder. Still soaking up the energy of the forest, Mom would occasionally come out to check on me, bring me sandwiches and the like. "This is a place of longing," she said once. "It was longing that drew your dad here in the first place. It's part of the ecosystem here." I gave her that look that teenagers give their mom when she doesn't really get it and wants to be left alone. All I'm saying is, don't get lost in it. That longing will eat you alive if you let it. If it starts getting to you, just head back to the house. I'll make a nice pie for you. I love you, sweetheart. She gave me a big hug when she said it. Once I had a good-sized basket, I went into the woods and filled it with all of Dad's favorite things, and buried it there with me. It took me all summer, but by the time I was through, I felt more connected to my dad and to the forest than I ever had. During my senior year, Laura died of cancer. I brought Reggie out to the clearing with some wisteria and a pack of food. I told him about the basket I made when Dad died, and that I'd stay out here for as long as he needed it. He was thankful. It was the last time I saw him. Mom figured he just couldn't handle being reminded of Laura and moved away. But there were rumors that he went out to the forest and just never came back. There were a couple of good years where I was always a little nervous that I'd find what was left of him during a hike. That faded with time, and I accepted that Mom was probably right. She usually was. I got a job doing carpentry after graduation and got an apartment in town. I loved my newfound freedom, being able to have boys over whenever I wanted, cook what I wanted, watch what I wanted. Every weekend, I'd go back to the house, back to my clearing. I'd get to feeling weird and itchy if I was gone for too long, like something wasn't right. There's a disconnect that happens when you live around people. Like you start to forget what's real. You start thinking that social reality is reality. That rumors and gossip and bullying and politics are real. But you can't put any of those things in your belly or rub it between your fingers to get the scent of it. Real is a rock in a clearing where I can eat pawpaws and smell the autumn leaves quickly on the way back to the soil. Real is the electric crackling of the leaves raining down and the fiery blossoms of the feather bells. All that other stuff, that's just people trying to get you to do things they want. I was 24 and sitting on the boulder reading a book when I first noticed the hollow place in the tree line. First I thought maybe a deer had come through and taken out the flowers in that area, but I just couldn't ignore it. Something about it just felt not good, but still welcoming. I could feel a wanting in my chest, a pull of uncertainty. I looked all around the path for signs of what made it. There were no tracks, no footprints, nothing, just an opening. It was damp and dark, like the bottom of a holler. The trees leaned over it and filled in the canopy so much that you couldn't see more than 10 feet down the path. It just dissolved into nothingness. The scent of decaying leaves came out of it. Being where it was at the time of the year, it should have been drying out and smelling of greenery. This smelled like autumn rain, toads, night crawlers. It felt like the wrong home. Like when your neighbor is moving and you get a peek at their apartment and it's just like yours, but it's just empty and wrong. The path was empty and wrong too, and I wanted it, and it frightened me. I must have spent an hour or more scouting around the path. I'd dig through the forest on either side of it until I hit the edge of the holler, then go back. I'd toss rocks and sticks into the darkness and watch them dissolve away. I turned on my phone's flashlight and held my arm out as far as I could, but I saw nothing. The sun started to dip, and I resolved to come back another day. I was back the next weekend. The path sat there staring at me. I had almost forgotten about it, but there it was, and I was filled with a hollow wanting. I sat my phone and collection of weaving materials on the boulder and approached the opening. Nothing. Just a big open maw. I could hear the silence seeping out of that place. I just stood there, staring, wondering, wanting. Curiosity got the better of me, and I moved into the path to fill the nothingness. It was dark. I mean, more than it should have been. At 20 feet in, I could no longer see the tops of the trees, the start of the path, or where it led to. I expected to run into the holler that surrounded the place in no time, but I just kind of kept on moving. The holler never showed up. The quiet of the place put me on my nerves. Forests have a life of their own. The breath of the wind and wings flowing through the trees, the pulse of insects and wildlife pushing through the underbrush. A real vitality. That was muted here. Like when you're wearing a good pair of headphones with the sound off. It's all just turned down and filled with cotton. Cotton, darkness, and the smell of night crawlers. I turned the corner and found the biggest patch of jack-o'-lantern mushrooms I'd ever seen. It was beautiful, easily 3 feet in diameter, and crawling a foot up the side of an old stump. At night, I bet you could see them glow from 100 feet away. I stepped over carefully to check them out. You can't eat them, but let me tell you, they're a sight to behold. I wanted to behold some sights at that point. It seemed like a little fairy city. Stems led to caps, next to more stems, thick enough you couldn't see anything past them. I moved all around them, just taking it in from all sides, when something caught my eye on the forest floor. Something smooth and regular in a sea of irregularity. Man-made things stick out here. I got down and dug at the forest floor a bit and pulled out a watch. It was a nice one by the look of it. Looked like it had been there for a while. I brushed the dirt off and saw the inscription on the back. For Reggie, my beloved. My heart sank. Jack-o'-lanterns grow on trees, not people, so I wasn't worried that I'd find him, but finding his watch way out here wasn't a good sign. I felt a pang of guilt. I pocketed the watch and moved back to the path, thinking I should go let someone know. There's plenty of time to explore here later. I was filled with a deep longing, a hollowed-out desire, and I stood there, fumbling with the watch in my pocket, lost in it all. The darkness, the dampness, and the bright orange of the mushrooms. I remember my dad, Laura, Reggie, my mom, all the people who made me who I am. Reality came back in a huge crash from behind me, like a wave of trees falling in my direction. Something massive was in the woods, smashing aggressively up the trail I had just come down. I took off running the other way. Whatever it was, I wanted some distance between us. I got a couple of 100 feet down the trail and stopped. I didn't like the idea of trying to hide in a part of the forest that was new to me. Maybe I avoided the animals, but I didn't want to do so at the cost of getting lost. I stood still, leaned against a tree, and just listened. We don't get big animals here. Deer are by far the biggest, but that's it. And I know that a deer running through the forest sounds different than that. There's been some talk of buffalo, bear, mountain lions coming back to the area, but nobody has seen any of them around here. I had no idea what that could have been, but I wanted to go back home. Dad would have known. He'll tell me what it was and how to handle it, calm me down, and get me home. I caught a flash of movement at the edge of my vision, just a bit too far into the darkness to see. It sounded big, but it was moving slow now. I felt the gnawing at my chest, a pulling, wanting, that hollow desire. I sat quiet and listened to it, trying to figure out what it was, where it was coming from, where it was going, waiting and listening for my chance to get past it, to get home. More movement, a quiet rustle in the underbrush. A shape came out of the darkness, dark and thin, wobbling slowly down the path. It coalesced into a definitive shape of a man, thin and gaunt and filthy. It was Reggie. He had been out here all these years, his hair and beard grown out in a brittle frizz. "Reggie!" I shouted. "Oh, Amy, what are you doing here? Why are you here? I'm so sorry. You can't be here. It's not safe." "What are you talking about? I've been out here my whole life. Where have you been? We need to get back. You don't look well. What have you been eating and drinking?" I can't, he said. I can't go back. I belong to it now. I can't go home." "What do you mean? That thing in the woods? It's probably just a really big deer and probably more afraid of us than we are of it." I was channeling my dad perfectly. He was so good in situations like this. It's not an animal, Amy. It's not anything you may have known about. I feel it. I feel it inside me. I feel it clawing at me. I can't let you end up like me. You gotta leave," he said. I'm not leaving without you. You're unwell." I grabbed his arm and started pulling him down the path, back towards home. That's when I felt it. The hollow wanting, the need, it stopped me in my tracks. Reggie twisted out of my grip and pushed me away, whispering in earnest, You have to go now." I stumbled forward into the darkness with a crash resounding behind me, coming on quickly. I slipped behind a rock to hide, poking my head out to see Reggie disappear down the path into the darkness, holding his hands up and calling, I'm here! I'm here!" The crashing slowed just on the edge of the darkness that I could see. Its body looked like a tube of smooth, mottled skin, a snake without scales, twice the thickness of the biggest tree I'd ever seen. It undulated through the air, belly barely scraping the top of the soil. Then a shoulder emerged, and a hand reached out of the darkness, grasping at the air. Dirt and grime mixed with a shiny ooze, getting squeezed and mixed together in the cracks of its knuckles. Thick mud caked the underside of its fingernails. The hand searched around in the air before landing on the ground and pushing the body forward and around the back into the darkness. Shortly after, another arm emerged from that blackness, repeating the process. Then a thick tail whipped out and around, smashing into a tree along the way. The longing raged inside me as Reggie led it back into the darkness. I ran, and I kept running through the leaves and the branches until I couldn't run anymore. I found a good tree, and I leaned against it out of view. I could still hear the thing shambling around behind me, slow and aimless now. Reggie must have distracted it. I sank down to the ground to catch my breath. It had definitely not been a deer. I sat there for a few minutes, letting my heart slow down, waiting for a calm so I could think this thing through. I can't keep going in this direction. I could probably just run a straight line back. The path wasn't terribly twisty, or if I could find a holler, I could probably follow it back around to the clearing. If that thing sticks to the path, that might be the safest route. Slower, but safer. That only works if it's the same holler. I could end up just getting lost, which would probably be worse. Straight back is probably safer. If I ran as fast as I could probably be in the clear pretty fast. A dull throbbing started up my feet. They pulsed, hot from running. I shifted back and forth a bit to let them calm down, and the ground shifted back. I looked down, and there were night crawlers everywhere, gnawing at the trees and leaves and wrapping around my shoes. All was moving back up the path. Then I felt it too, the deep, gnawing desire. I could feel it in my heart. I felt it. A wanting, a longing. I knew what was coming, but I needed to look anyway. My eyes followed the trail of night crawlers back up the path. The head of the thing emerged from the darkness, broad and flat, pushed forward by enormous muscular arms. With every step, its hands reached out, grasping the air. My heart filled with need and want, an emptiness crying out, a desire ringed with crackled burnt edges. Reggie laid in its mouth, legs dangling from side to side, arms and head from the other. Long strings of saliva dripped around him, mixing with the mud and calling to the night crawlers. He turned his head, and I caught his eye. Sadness washed over him, and he whispered, "Run!" I did. I ran right past them both. The wanting burned at my skin and hollowed me out as I passed inches away. Every part of me sang the aberration of giving in, and I have never wanted more. But my feet kept going, and in time, so did I. With the creature behind me, I kept crashing down the path, my every nerve lit up with that hollow need. I crashed out to the clearing, over the pass, and back to the yard where Mom was waiting. A fresh pie, just out of the oven. Looks like it's just about down to cinders now. Don't worry, I'll hang around till it's fully out. I wouldn't expect you to help me clean up my mess. So, as you move along, this is Dr. Plague, wishing you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.